Hi, welcome to this preview video for Ynaros Fallin. This is a fascinating, and I'm really saying my opinion up front, battle between two sides. It can be played as a 2 versus 2 and as a solo as well, but I'm going to focus on the versus 1 gameplay. Of two mages, two shamans, I should better say, trying to bring each other down and win the game. You win either by depleting the vital stones, let's say the health, the energy of the opponent, or by gathering the most experience points from your actions throughout the course of the game. Players will be moving their different figures, which are either shamans or followers, on the grid of the main board, trying to activate from specific locations magical lands, which they can acquire onto the board and put them into slots so that they gain different abilities and different bonuses. And by doing so, they also gain additional experience. They gain additional experience by converting magical crystals into experience points, by winning battles over the figures of their opponents, the different characters that they have on board, and by acquiring different specific things on the board. So this really gives a very tense back and forth between two sides, but brings a lot of, I would say, tactical gameplay, in my opinion, which I really enjoy, with simple rules and very innovative ideas. The game looks absolutely amazing. This is a fantasy theme. I haven't seen it before. It's a magical universe where two sides battle for supremacy over one another, trying to wear each other down. But the game comes with a lot of novel ideas, I should say, and a lot of cool things. And one of those things is the fact that you add additional mechanics if you move from one level to another for the game. So essentially, in a way, it's like having 3 games, not one, in a box. And I know it sounds a bit weird, but trust me, this is really nice, because you have the core of the game, which is quite a complete game, I would say, so it's not lacking in anything. And then you start building with additional mechanics, with the shadow tiles, with the experience fragments in level 3, and you move from level 1 to level 2 and level 3. And these all they all bring their own features, their own mechanics in the gameplay, and they all add depth rather than complexity, and various additional points to get more experience and win the game. The game plays fast, it's really tense, back and forth. You're trying to move around all your characters, you're trying to bring more characters, you're trying to exterminate your opponent's characters, and while doing so trying to gain more magical tile lands for your slots, and more crystals, of course, because you can convert them into experience points. So very easy to get behind rule set. A lot of options, a lot of, I would say, replayability for each of the 3 different levels. But also, I really can't recommend it, and I can't highlight enough how exciting it is to have not 1 but 3 games. You have the game, and then you have the bigger game, and then you have a bigger game. And there are not that many things that they're added from one level to the other. There are quite a few, but they're not enough to confuse you in terms of complexity. There are a couple of things that they're added, but they bring so much more depth, I would say, into the game. Because, for example, for moving from level 1 to level 2, you add the shadow tiles. You don't have any tiles, and suddenly you have tile placement, and the tile placement is really important because you can create corridors so that you can move very fast from one side to the other and really attack your opponent, or create blocks so that you can protect your opponent and they have to convert those tiles to their own color, and so on. You get the idea. And the same goes with, for example, the level 3, where you have those temples, and they're like focal points, because you have to get on those temples, because you gain at the end of every turn additional experience points for each character that they are on the shadow temples, on the base of the foundation of the temple structure. So these were just a few things to list, but there are quite a few. Again, not making it complex, or there's no need for remembering too many things. Once you played a couple of games, you just have conquered everything, but you haven't conquered the depth of the game, because the depth comes from your opponent's, of course, choices and how they play out the game. So very much excited. I'm just going to show you the rules. I'm going to be very thorough, so explain everything in detail for each of the levels. So it's going to be a lengthy video, but I'm going to put timestamps into the description of the video so that you can quickly follow them and go and dive directly into any chapter that you're interested, or to any level that you're interested, to see how it plays. So join me at the table, I'll show you how the game plays, and don't forget to visit the link in the description of the video so that you can find out more about this new amazing and really clever, should I say, sandbox of a game? it's not a sandbox game, but it's like an onion. It's an onion because it has a very nice core and then it has more layers on top of it, and I really enjoy it for that. It's, yeah, I would say a very beautiful onion board game. So join me and I'll show you how the game plays, and we'll come back at the end of this video for some final wrap-up. Welcome to Ynaros Fallin, the world-shattering game of shaman on shaman dueling. Navigate through the wild lands and harness their power to increase your magical might. Meet the other shaman and prove your mastery. Do you have what it takes to become the wisest shaman the land has ever seen? Ynaros Fallin has a lot to offer, but first of all we need to divide this knowledge into 3 sections. The first section is going to be the basic rules, the second section is going to be the levels, and I'm going to briefly mention the appendices, where it has all the information for every ability and every tile. What is the goal of the game? Either amass the most experience by the end of the game, or deplete your opponent's vital crystals or characters to become the ultimate shaman. This will make sense in a sec. So first of all, let's familiarize ourselves with the components of the game. We have one main board, which is, as you see, this one in front of you. We also have one battle board, which is double-sided. This is a battle board that you see horizontally. There are 2 double-sided character mini boards, these ones that have those minis, one for each player. And there is also 2 double-sided shadow tiles mini boards, this one and that one. This is used in the advanced game. There are several magic land tiles. We have 53 magic lands. This consists of 13 red, 18 green and 22 orange. Speaking of which, I have already preset the game to explain how the game works, but these are the red ones, and all these are going to make more sense in a sec. And there is a very big variety of additionally green and orange. These are the green ones, and similarly you have also various orange ones. There are quite a few. These are in total 53, and they give a lot of replayability in the game on top of the rest of the elements. The game comes with 70 shadow cards. These are the shadow cards. This is how a shadow card back looks like. And it has various cards of 2 types. You have the ones that have the color of the one shaman, the yellow, plus the dark color. You have the ones that have the color of the other shaman, the blue, plus again the dark color, so the other purples. And then you have some which have either the color of the blue shaman or the color of the yellow shaman. This makes up, once shuffled thoroughly, the total deck of the shadow cards. There are 18 characters and we have 8 followers, 4 in each of the player's color. The followers look really nice. They have this mask on them. Again, this is a prototype, so keep that in mind. I've done an extensive unboxing of the prototype. It looks gorgeous, but still it's a prototype. So again, these are the shamans of the yellow player, the followers, sorry, of the yellow player, and these are the followers of the blue player. Everything is color coded, so there is no difficulty in telling which piece belongs to which player. There are also, in addition, the shaman figure, which I have here. These are really cool meeples, and they start opposite to each other. And there is also additional dark followers, which are used in the advanced game, and we're going to explain later on. The game comes, all this, and these are components also extra, so not falling under the base components. You also have various magic crystals. These crystals are driving everything in the game, and these are really powerful magical items that the players are trying to harness and use for their different functions. And I like the fact how this slots really nice into the board. This is important because you can also put this in the advanced game, which I'm going to explain later on. But this detail really made me look twice. I like the fact how they really match the insert with the crystal shards so that it fits the main board. The game has also a lot of different dice. We have 2 shadow dice, one for each player's color. You can see it here. This is no regular dice. It has values from 2 to 7. It has the color of the shaman and the symbol, and the respective yellow one. Very nice dice, custom. You also have 3 additional combat dice, one red, one green, and one orange. These are custom. Again, very beautiful. And they're used over the course of the battle, so they just stay here on the battle board for the moment. The game also comes with 2 double-sided personal boards. Side A is for the beginner and side B is for the expert. Even more replayability here. So for example, this is a board of the blue shaman. And the same goes for the board of the yellow shaman. I'm going to explain the functionality of these boards, how they work during the course of the game, but for the moment I'm just covering the components. And then you also have 5 mystical source tiles. These are these tiles which have activated side or deactivated side, and they go on these 5 spots here on the board during setup. Last but not least, we have additional components for level 2. So these components were for level 1. So for the level 2 we have the additional shadow tiles, again covering both the blue player. So they cover spaces on the board, the yellow player. And we also have on top of those the shadow tiles, which again have the shadow color, the black. In the level 2 we also have the 20 evocation tokens. These are these tokens over here. These are not used in the basic game, but you can use them in the second level of the game, the second advanced level. And then we have the level 3 game, which has the 3 temples. So these temples are used in level 3. Really nice figures, very unique. There are also the 22 experience fragment tokens, which are these over here. These again are used on level 3 of the advanced game, and this makes up the whole amount of components based on level. So let's move to some more details about the aspects of the game. So, board geography. In order to be familiar with the magic places and their functions and names, first we need to have a quick introduction about the various elements of the game. We have the main board, which is over here, and you have different things to highlight. First of all, we have the mystic source that you can see here. This is the mystic source, and we have 5 of them, as you can see. And we have these tiles that we're going to place there from the deactivated side. This is how they look activated. Okay, and you place these tiles over there. This is going to be explained during setup. This is a mystic source tile. You also have the non-red magical land slot. These slots are 4 that you see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And during setup you will be placing green and orange land tiles here, which I'm going to explain during setup. You also have 2 additional slots with red highlight around the border, and these are the red magic land slot where you place the red magic land piles. So these are very different, both in terms of the front, they look red, but also on the back they're different from the normal ones, as you can see. Again, we're going to explain how this is done during setup. Okay. Then we also have the XP tracker, and this is a really nice feature of the game. This is recessed, so this is a very high quality board, as you can see, matte, recessed with thick cardboard, even in the prototype form. And here you track the XP. Here is the XP of the one side, the one shaman sitting from this side, and here's the XP from the other shaman sitting opposite, starting from this side. Here you see it has 2 tracks, so 0, 10, 20, 30, all the way up to 100, and 0 to 9. That means that if I have at any given time, let's say 34 experience, I would put the respective cubes there, and when I gain experience, I move my experience up in the respective increments to indicate that I'm gaining additional experience, because this is one of the things you really want to do in the game, to gain experience in order to win. Then we also have the power slot. This is the area for the power slot, where you place magic crystals you play during the magic battle, and each player has their own. And here are some reminders. So this section here is linked with the magic battle, which happens here on the magic board, on the battle board. We have the hearth, it's the shaman's origin place, and where he also starts the game. So the blue player starts here, typically standing still. I'm just laying it flat so that you can see it better in the camera. And here is the yellow shaman. Actually, it makes more sense to put them now that you have seen how they look like standing. Okay, we also have the hut. It's where followers from each side start the game or return to. So you have one already which starts here for the blue player, and the respective one who starts here from the yellow player. We also have the free custom space, which is this slot here, which of course it used to host either the magic crystal tray for level 1 and level 2 experience, or the fragment platform, which is this one, for level 3, once you're playing with the experience fragments. But for level 1 and level 2, we're just putting the slot of the tray, and this is a really nice feature. Last but not least, we have the conversion area, which is over here, to convert crystals into experience points, and this has 3 recessed slots here to hold for crystals, because you can convert 3 crystals to experience depending on the number and type, depending on the type of those 3, the color I mean, then you have different amount of experience that you're gaining. We're going to explain this later on. So the blue shaman has their slot here, and the reminder is here as well, the legend, and the respective yellow shaman has it opposite. So these are all the features of the main board. Now let's move to the battle board. So this is a battle board, as you can see here. It has different elements. First of all, it has the vital crystals tracker slots, where you place your 4 vital crystals, and if you lose your 4th and last one, so one side has 4 and the other side has 4 as well. When you lose your last one, that's one of the ways to lose a game actually, so you need to be mindful. You have the battle dice slot, which is over here. It has the icon of the battle dice, and here where you place the battle dice. And you also have the start of the battle, which is in the center, and you put 1 figure from each side, and this falls back depending on the number of damage they take during the battle from magic power, which is going to be explained later on. Last, you have an area with the legend of elemental damage. This is what I mean, which is explained here, and it's 1 for one side and 1 for the other one, because this is between the players also. You can put it not on top of the board game, but you can put it in another convenient location. Now, let's check the mini boards and the personal board. These are the mini boards. We have first of all this mini board here. This is used to store your shadow tiles. Okay. Then you have your character mini board, which is this one, to store your character original stock. And you can put them in any way, makes more sense. I like the fact that they are separate boards, so you can move them around depending on your table or your size of playing area. And then you have your personal board, which is this one. Again, we have 2, 1 for each shaman, and the art is really nice on the board. I really like what they have done here. Now this has some really nice features to explain. First of all, we have the magical crystal storage, which is over here. So these are slots for facilitating storage of your crystals. I'm referring to those crystals that you gain through the course of the game. So you place them on those areas here. You also have magical land slots, which are these slots here. So when gaining magical lands, you click them in the respective slots, and this is a number of different experience points. As you can see, you're going to gain the XP points you will get at the end of the game. So if I manage to start from this slot, then this and that and this, and all the way up to the final one, you're going to gain that amount of victory point, experience points. Okay, so 5, 10 and 15 for this side, and 20, 30 and 40 from that side. So you can go all the way up to 40 from this side and all the way up to 15. This is going to be explained later on how we score, but the last thing I want to mention here is this area over here, where it's an area to keep your shadow die. This is your slot for your shadow die, and it goes over there to indicate also the number on it. Okay, and all these are magical slots. Here also you can see some icons. These are magical crystal bonus. When you conquer a magical land, you get a magical crystal of the same color. Now, from what I understand, there's going to be some difference between the standard and deluxe version. Standard version will have custom meeples, while the deluxe version will going to have 3D miniatures. And the standard version is going to have, for example, followers, which are going to look, I don't have them here, but a smaller size than this one. And this is going to be the wooden meeple version of the shaman. While the deluxe version is going to have miniatures, which again, they're going to be like these meeples, but without the mask. So you're going to be able to insert a mask so that you can convert one of the miniatures into a shaman, because the miniature is going to be like, the shaman is going to be like a miniature plus the mask. Okay, so if it has the mask, it's going to be the shaman. At least this is the latest update. This may change during the production or the Kickstarter campaign. But be aware that there's going to be differences from what you see in terms of if you have the standard version with the wooden meeples or the deluxe version with the 3D miniatures. So if you have the wooden standard version, you place one shaman meeple in your hearth and one follower meeple in your hat, and you place the remaining 3 shamans and 3 followers meeples to your character board, and then you place the remaining shaman meeple at the center of your battle board. For now, it's going to be used like your battle pawn. If you have the deluxe version, you place one shaman miniature in your hearth and one follower miniature in your hat, and you place the remaining 2 followers and 3 masks in your character board. You place the remaining shaman miniature with the mask at the center of the battle board. For now, it's going to be the battle pawn. So, one follower with the components I have now is going to be on the hat, and one shaman is going to be on the hearth over here when they start the game. The same goes for the opponent. The remaining followers will going to be on your stock, so here for the blue player and here for the yellow player. And as I mentioned, you're going to also use one for a battle pawn, which is going to be in the center of the battle board, facing each other. Again, we have 3 levels, level 1, which is a standard, level 2 and level 3. And they have some differences in components and setup. We're going to cover them at the end separately in detail, but just for familiarizing again the components, we have for level 1 and level 2, we use a magic crystal tray, which goes into this pot. And for level 1 and level 2, we have this side of the battle board, which goes all the way to -10. And we also use the respective components. And for level 3 specifically, we replace this magic tray with this fragment platform. Again, we're going to cover them during setup. We use, instead of this side, which is used for level 1 and level 2, the advanced side, the expert personal board, which is the one on the back for level 3. So for level 1 and level 2, the front, for level 3, the back. And we also use the back side of the battle board, which goes all the way to -8 instead of -10 in the reverse side. Okay, so these are changes that you're going to see during setup, explained in detail depending on the level that you're playing. It's recommended to start from level 1. The last point to mention is that all your magical land tiles, they have, as you're going to see, a little flame on the bottom of each magical land, which will tell you from which level of experience they can be used. If you have 1 dot, it's level 1. If you have 2 dots, it's level 2. And I'm missing somehow, if you had 3 dots here, it's going to be level 3. So depending again on your level, you need to set aside the corresponding magical tiles, because they need to match the standard level 1 if you're playing level 1 with 1 dot, the second level with 2 dots if you're playing level 2, and the third level with 3 dots if you're playing level 3. Okay, so we start with level 1, which is the Novices level. It starts with some setup, which we're going to explain now. It's played by 2 to 4 players. Keep in mind that there is a solo expansion as well, which you're going to discover during the Kickstarter campaign. This is ages 14 and up, and the length is 45 minutes. So I'm going to show you how to set up the game. First of all, for level up setup, the base game of all the components are used as explained before, and we follow these quick steps. We take the board, which are the main battle and personal board, and arrange them as we best fit, but it's recommended that, for example, the personal board, which I have here on the side, it goes exactly at the bottom of this tray, so all the way down, so your shaman starts right above it. but for the sake of screen size, I'm going to leave it here for the moment, so that I can fit everything in a 16:9 ratio. Then you also take your stock board, which is this one, and you also slot it here under the bottom left side of your board, where you have your stock of followers that you're going to put here. But again, for the sake of screen ratio, I'm keeping it here. You're not using this. This is only used in the advanced level, so not for the level 1. And you can also take your battle board from the side, which is for the respective level 1, and set it to the side. So in theory, you have the blue player with all the components from this side and the side of the blue battle board facing him or her. And from the opposite side, you have the yellow player with the yellow components. And if you put vertically the battle board instead of here, then you're going to have it right from each side facing half. Then each player takes their shadow die and they place it facing the value of 4. Okay, so you rotate it, you place it 4, and you place it on the respective place where you keep your shadow die. The same goes for the other player. You pick 5 of 6 mystical sources randomly and place them on the 5 mystical source hexes and reveal them, flipping them up. And on top of each, you place the magical crystals of the indicated color. You place 1 shaman on your hearth and 1 follower on your hat, and then you put the other 3 shamans and followers in the character board. You place vital crystals, battle bones and battle dice on the battle board as indicated here. So vital crystals, battle dice and the battle pawn as indicated in front of you. And then you place the shadow card pile face down, shuffled of course, beside the battle board, which is this one. You place the reserve of magic crystals in the magic crystals tray, which is over here. And this should, you can ignore this one, the black ones. So focus on these ones. So you have 10 red crystals here, 10 orange crystals and 10 green crystals respectively. Just make a correction and remove the red cube from here and put 2 black ones, 1 here and 1 here. Still, at this stage, you have no magical land tiles on place. You just set them aside next to your playing area so that you can prepare for the draft, which I'm going to explain later. Actually, let's explain it now. So how we do the magical drafting. So randomly, you form 6 magical land piles, 2 red and 4 non-red. And remember, the red magical piles are made of 2 lands each. So you're going to put 2 tiles on this slot and 2 tiles on this slot respectively. Okay, compared to the normal magical lands, which have 3 tiles, 3 tiles, 3 tiles, and 3 tiles. Then you place the 2 red magic land piles face up on their place on the main board and add 2 black cubes on their decay trackers. So 1 black cube here and 1 black cube here. And this should be placed face up. So let's do that quickly. We have 2 red ones, okay, placed on this side, and 2 red ones placed on this side. And keep in mind that you need to have a black cube on the beginning, on the full charge, let's say, of the decay. Once it reaches the end, that means the red magical land is decayed. In order to set up the non-red magical piles face down, here, 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 and here, what happens is the players begin a drafting process. The first player chooses a pile, secretly selects the land on the top, checks the land on the top of the pile, and puts the pile face down on the main board. The second player repeats this process, and the 2 players keep drafting magical tiles, placing them face down until all 4 piles are placed on the board, with each slot having 3 tiles respectively. I forgot to mention that before doing that, you roll off shadow die to determine who goes first, and you reroll ties. The one who has the highest number is going to start the drafting process. So the player who picked first plays second and receives 1 crystal of the choice as a compensation. Again, to show you that after you have picked the magical source tiles and flipped them face up, this version of the prototype didn't have colored mystical source tiles, they're going to reveal a different type of crystals, and then you're going to place the matching color of that crystal on top of that tile. So, gameplay. For the gameplay, there is a very simple sequence how the turn goes. First, we have phase 1, which is deeds. You perform 2 actions. Then is phase 2, which is fate. You apply the consequences of your movement actions, if any, depending on where your figures are standing. And then phase 3, which is cantrips, which is optional, and you get the bonuses. Now, let's see a couple of words for each of the phases. First, we have phase 1, which is the deeds. There are 4 types of action in the game, and on your turn you can perform 2 different actions or the same action twice. The options are the following. Draw. You can draw 5 action cards, 5 shadow cards from the common deck, which is this one over here. And again, you can find a nice player aid with all the options. So draw 5 cards from the shadow deck. Play. You can play shadow cards to increase the score of your shadow die. Move. You can use your shadow die to move 1 or multiple characters, shamans or followers. And control, which is the last one. You can play a magical crystal against an opponent's character to control their power. All these are going to be explained now, but again you have all these 4 options when you do the phase 1 deeds, and you can select 2, either different or the same, among your 2 actions from the 4 options. So the first option, the draw, is very simple. You draw 5 shadow cards from the common deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the maximum number of shadow cards you can hold in your hands is 10. At the end of each of your actions, if you have more than 10 cards in hand, you need to discard down to 10. So by choosing this action as part of the 2 actions you get during your deeds phase, you will draw 5 cards. Okay, and again your hand limit is going to be 10. These cards, the shadow cards, drive a lot of things in the game, but we're going to explain them later on. So this is the first option, draw. The second option is play. You play means you discard shadow cards of any color. It doesn't matter what the shadow card shows on them. Okay, you just discard them of any color and you increase your shadow die by that number of times. So for example, if you play discard 1, 2, 3 shadow cards, that means I'm going to increase my shadow value from 4 plus 3 all the way to 7. Of course, when you play, after finish playing, which means discarding shadow cards, you place them in a dedicated discard pile near the main board. A third option for an action during your deeds phase is to move. The number of your die over here indicates the movement points you can spend to move X number of sections, hexes let's say, for 1 or multiple characters during your turn. Every time you perform the movement action, you diminish the value of your shadow by 1 die, by 1 pip, 1 number that is. If your die is at 2, you can move without decreasing it, of course. Any hex on the main board can host up to 2 characters of any color. That means you can have either 1 or 2 of different colors or of the same, and they can be either followers or followers and shaman. Also, you can never start and finish the movement on the same hex with the same character. So here how movement works. Move. The number of your die indicates the movement points you can spend to move 1 or multiple characters during your turn. Every time you perform the movement action, diminish the value of your shadow die by 1. If your die is 2, you can move without decreasing it. Every hex on the main board can host up to 2 characters of any color. That means, for example, this is a legit placement, you can have 2 characters there, or if you have an occasion where you move into an opponent's hex, if it's only 1 character there, then this is allowed, but a magic battle is going to occur. In any case, for performing the movement, this is how it works. When you move on empty hexes, you move to an empty hex, then you just spend one movement point. For example, let's say shaman here is over there and they want to move on this mystical tile hex. They're going to reduce their value on the shadow die by 1 from 4 to 3, and they can move 1, 2, 3 independently. So this is one case when you move on an empty hex, either on mythical tile hexes or on the board, or when you move to a magic land like this one. So for example, I want to move here from here, or an opponent's hearth, or a hex occupied by an opponent character. So let's say I want to move there, or I could also move on the opponent's hearth. In all these situations, there is the following that happens. There is an event that will going to be resolved during either the fate or the cantrips phase. You can cross a magic land without stopping on it, so there's no problem there. So again, if I wanted to move here, or here, or here, I would move. I would spend one value from a shadow die, and I would move either on the magic land, or on this figure, or on the opponent's hearth. And I will stop there for sure, because I want that there's going to be an event happening. That's why I'm moving on these spots during the fate or the cantrips phase, which we're going to cover later. The fourth option is control. You establish control over your opponent if one of your characters is inside, that means straight line, of one of the characters of the opponent. You check the big picture, which is essentially you check for a line of sight by drawing lines to see if you have them in a straight line. When playing the control action, you have three different options depending on the type of crystal you discard, but let's see first of all the straight lines that they merge. Imagine this example, you have this yellow shaman and this blue shaman here. It could be any opponent character for that matter. So I'm just going to point with the tip of this pencil on all the hexes that they will be under control if the yellow shaman, for example, plays control. Again, it's from one of your characters versus the opponent characters. So let's see this character. So it controls, if he takes the control action, 1, 2, 3 spaces in a straight line, or 1, 2, 3 spaces, or 1, 2 spaces over there, just one from that side of the hex, 1, 2, 3 spaces from that side, and 1, 2, 3 spaces here from that side. So in this line, 1, 2, 3, it reaches the opponent character. So how does control work? Basically, you discard one crystal from your reserve. This is your reserve. Okay, I remind you have 6 slots. So you pick up one crystal and you discard it. Then depending on the type of crystal you discarded, the following apply. If you discarded a green crystal, this type of crystal, then you use the power of the opponent's green magic land only once, even if your opponent has already used it, and then you put a black cube on it in order to mark it. So any such green magical lands that they are slotted in your opponent's player board, for example, like that, okay? So any of those green magic lands slotted from your opponent, they can be used from you when you discard a green crystal. And you can use their ability for what it is. Once you do that, you're going to place one black cube on it in order to indicate that you cannot do it again. Okay? So this is how what happens when you discard during control a green crystal. If you discard during control a red crystal, like this one, then you add the value of your opponent's shadow die to your own die, and then you can perform a movement using the summed values. So you have 4, and let's say your opponent had 5 on their shadow die. You add the value, 4 plus 5 equals 9, for example, this case. Okay? And then you combine the total number of movement points, in this case 9, in order to perform a movement. Of course, if you end your movement on a magical land which requires a shadow die score as your cost, you can use the sum of the two dice to conquer it. In this case, your opponent die keeps their value and you reduce yours to a minimum of 2. And then let's see what happens when you discard, instead of a green, red crystal, an orange crystal. So if you discarded an orange crystal during control, then you roll a battle die and you decrease the magic energy of your opponent by the number of rolled to weaken them for the next magical battle. So you're going to roll the battle, and in this case I'm going to reduce their spot 4 spots behind, so they're going to push them 4 spots towards the skull icon, and they will be weaker for the next battle. That means they would go 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So there you have it. These are all the options for the deeds phase. You, again, I remind you, do two actions, either two different or the same, from the 4 options I just described. Now, the next phase is the fate phase with the events. This phase applies most often if you play move or control actions and you reach special places on the board or an opponent character. You need to resolve them in this phase of your turn. So again, this has different scenarios depending on where your characters have landed, so let's see them one by one. First A, we have the mystical source activation and magical land discovery. At the end of phase 1, if one of your characters reached a mystical source tile, again I remind you these are the mystical source tiles, we're here. So if your character reached one mystical source tile, any character, either a shaman or a follower, then the tile source gets activated and you trigger the discovery of magic lands. How does magic lands discovery happen? Again, I remind you these are the tiles of magic lands, and we already have them on the various spots over the board during setup. The backside of each of the magic land, as you can see, it has different level of discovery. So 1, only 1 circle highlighted, 2, 2 circles highlighted, 3, and 4. 4 different levels. So you use the value of your shadow die to discover magical lands front side, and you must use all of your die score to discover, but you choose which ones. For example, if you have a die at level 4, like in this case, and you can discover a land of 3 plus a land of 1, or 2 lands of 2, or 4 lands of value 1. If you don't have enough energy to discover any land, then nothing happens. So in this case, let's say I have face up, face down as it is, a level 1, a level 2, a level 2, and a level 3. So I can spend my 4 value die in order to discover, let's say, a level 3 and a level 1. So simply I would spend my die and I will be discovering them by flipping them face up. And again, in order to do that, I need one of my characters to reach a magical source tile. So for example, I should have, let's say, a follower on one of those 5 magical source tiles, okay, in order to activate and discover magical lands. B, the second option, conquering magical lands. When your character reaches the discovered magic land, so in this case this one or that one, okay, for example, then they can conquer it if they fulfill the land's requirement. To conquer it, you complete the steps as I'm going to describe them now. So you move your character, shaman or follower, on a green or orange discovered land. So let's say, for the sake of example, we have discovered more. Let's say this was also discovered, okay? So again, let's say that I'm moving, let's say this shaman was here and this shaman was there. So I'm moving the shaman on the discovered land tile here, okay? And I'm trying to fulfill the requirements. So this has a special requirement, so let's open another one just to explain it later. So let's say it was this one. Okay. Over here. So, and again, I can have different followers on different discover magical land tiles, so it doesn't have to be only one, okay? So I can have several ones, both shaman and followers. So again, the steps are very simple. You move your character, shaman or follower on the green or orange discovered land, then you fulfill the requirements. I'm going to come back for the requirements in a sec. Then you take the magic land tile once you have fulfilled the requirements and place it on your personal board and take the reward described on the magical land tile if possible. So that would mean that, again, I would take this one and I can slot it here, and I can slot either orange, okay, or blue ones. And again, depending on the type of the magic land you conquered, if it is a green or an orange one, you take the corresponding crystal from the reserve. So again, for the sake of the example, let's say I just discovered with the shaman an orange one or a green one. I would take this one, slot it in the first available slot. So again, this goes in this one. I have no other magical lands. And because it's green, I'm going to get one green crystal from the reserve and add it onto my slot. I have slots for 3 crystals. That means if I get a 7th one, I need to discard down to 6. Okay. And if I go to, for example, instead of a green, an orange one, that goes without saying, I would take an orange crystal instead. The last thing that happens during this stage is you return your character who conquered the land back to its original place. If that was a shaman, it's returned to its hearth. If that was a follower, it's returned to the hut. A word about requirements. Green and orange magic lands can only be conquered if the player has met the requirements. They may include having certain characters on the board or certain score on your shadow die, and there are 2 main requirement types that need to be satisfied. First, you pay with your shadow die. The die must have the indicated value, and then it will be reduced to a minimum of 2, for example this one or that one, so you need to have at least 6 on your 7 on your calendar, on your shadow die. Then you reduce it, you spend your shadow die value essentially, and then you can meet the requirement for that type of magical land. Or there are cases where it has symbols of characters, and then you pay with characters. A second character of yours needs to be on the main land, hence do not count, or hats. This character, in addition to one who conquered the magic land, goes back to your original place. If it's a shaman on the hearth, if it is a follower on the hut. There is a complete reference of all magical lands and the requirements and bonuses, because you also, I remind you, get the bonuses. We're going to cover them later in the appendix rulebook. And again, as I said before, all the respective magical lands, they go into their slots. So you can have up to 6 magical lands conquered. And then you'd get that number of experience points in total. More on that later. Then the third is the fight in the magic battle. If you move one of your characters, follower or shaman, in the same hex as one of your opponent's character, at this stage you will trigger a magic battle. In this phase, you will be the attacker and your opponent will be the defender, and we'll explain how the magic battle works in the following minutes. But for the moment, keep in mind that if you end your movement in a space with another figure of the opponent, then you trigger a battle. All these battles are going to be resolved during the fate phase, because it has to do with where you're standing. The fourth and last thing that you can do, depending on the positioning, is if you enter the hearth of your opponent. So if you're the blue player, you enter the yellow hearth, or if you're the yellow player, you enter the blue hearth over there, then you evoke a new character. But before doing so, let me simply explain something. As I mentioned, these are the miniatures and they wear a mask. So I have been leaving them on the miniatures for the course of this video, but keep in mind that this is how the follower looks. So the follower should be like that, okay? And when they get the mask on them, then they are upgraded to a shaman. And you can have various followers or shaman, okay? So you can use, let's say, for the sake of the example, instead of having those here, you can put your wooden pawn there, okay? And I'm going to use those figures as such as a follower and as such as a shaman, okay? So when you enter the hearth of the opponent, some special rules apply. There are two options. A, if the hearth is empty, there is no character in there, so there is no one sitting on the hearth of the opponent. So when you enter there, so this follower managed to propel themselves all the way there, so they enter the opponent health. Then what happens is you discard a magic crystal of any color from your reserve, from your personal board, and then you may choose to evoke a new character. To do this, you take a follower from outside the board and place it in your hat over there. Again, I remind you, this is your personal stock. This is independent, this is outside of your hat, and this is where is your hat. So in this case, I would discard any crystal, let's say that, and I would take evoke a new follower. So I would take the follower and put it here in my hat, okay? Or I evolve a follower into a shaman. That means replacing a character with a new one. And if the follower was on the main board, saves their position while evolving. So let's say this was on the hat or was here, okay? Instead of calling a new follower and putting it in the hat and adding a pawn essentially in the board, I just take an already available follower and I upgrade them to a shaman by adding a mask. So now he becomes a shaman and he retains his original spot. So he's still there where he was before. Not necessarily the one that I moved into the hearth. And the character involved into the evocation goes back to the original place. If it was a follower, it will go, of course, in the hat. If it was a shaman, let's say this was the one that moved into the opponent's hearth, then they will go into my own hearth back. So always shamans go to the hearth and followers go to the hat. And this is the original starting spot. But the benefit of my moving into the opponent's hearth was that I either added a new follower into the hat or I upgraded a follower on the board into a shaman. But there is another scenario if the hearth isn't empty. When you move your figure into your opponent's hearth, if there is an opponent's figure there, then a battle occurs. If you win the battle, then you can perform an evocation using the rules I just described without paying a magic crystal. The same type of evocation rules apply like before. And again, in the other case, once, let's say, I defeated them, I have removed them, and then I make an evocation, I just don't need to pay a crystal, and I return this to my hat, and I proceed with the evocation, either making a new follower into the board or upgrading an existing follower on the board into a shaman. The third phase in the game is cantrips in your turn. In addition, after your two actions, you can perform either or both of the two optional cantrips. If you choose to do both, you perform them in the order you prefer. You have harness and you have focus. For harness, you get the bonuses from red lands you control and decay their energy. For focus, you put up to 3 crystals from your personal board on the conversion area on the bottom right of your side. Now, let's examine the cantrips in more detail. The first option is the harness. You can get the bonus from every red land you control by having a figure on the red land, and when you harness, you decay the energy of the red land by 1. If the red land is depleted, its energy reaches 0. You remove it and you use a new one below it. In addition, once a red land is depleted, you take the character that was on the land back to its original place. If it was a follower in the hat, if it was a shaman on the hearth. So in this case, as an option I can do is I can do for every red land tile I control by being on top of it, I can decay it by 1 step, and then use its ability. These are powerful abilities, and I can do even if I control 2 red lands tiles like the 2 opposite ones. Again, when this is done a second time on a future turn, or the third time on a future turn, then this is going to be decayed. That means this tile is removed, okay? And the figure that was on there, it returns to its original spot on its hat or hearth, respectively. And then the one below appears. And this is going to be fully charged for future use. Again, the main difference with green or orange magical land tiles is that you don't acquire them and put them on your personal board. The red ones, I mean, the orange ones and the green ones, you acquire them. The red ones, you just use during cantrip phase their ability, which are very powerful. This one, for example, they're going to give you 1 orange crystal immediately. So really, really powerful. The second cantrip option is the focus. And again, you can do both, I remind you. For the focus, you're using this conversion area on the bottom right side or left side in this case, depending on the side you're playing. In any case, this is the area where the conversion happens. You can put up to 3 magical crystals from your personal board stock into those 3 slots in order to convert them into XP. Then you discard the magical crystals and move your marker on the XP tracker to indicate the newly gained points. Vital crystals, magenta, are wild and can be used in any color. You can convert maximum one type per turn. And here's a quick reminder of how the conversion works depending on the different types. So for example, you have the best one is this one, which gives you 15 experience points if you have 3 crystals of different colors. So for example, if I do that as a conversion, 3 different colors, I will gain 15 experience points. Another option is that you have 3 of the same color. So for example, let's say I had 3 yellow and I move them here in the conversion area, and this will give me 12 experience points. Or if I had 2 of a color and 1 of a different color, like in this case, I would gain 10 experience points. So let's say I got 10 experience points. What I do is I move to the experience tracker, and let's assume I already had 33 experience points. I just gained 10. That means I move this one to 40. So 33 plus 10, 43, 43, etc. If I had different type of experience points, I will still track it accordingly on my experience tracker side. It's different. This is completely for the blue player, and opposite, the yellow player has their own experience tracker. And what about characters? There are 2 types of characters in the game which have different benefits. We have the shamans, which wear the mask if you have the mini edition, or they look like that, again, if you have the wooden standard edition, okay? So in any case, the shamans, they can attack any other character on the board. So a shaman can attack both a follower, opponent, or a shaman from the opponent. And the place of origin is the hearth, adjacent to the main land, so they start or they go back to this spot here. And then you have the followers, which are these type of figures. And the follower, they can attack only followers, so this blue follower cannot attack the yellow shaman. They can only attack followers of the opponent. And their place of origin is in the hut. You need to move towards the hearth to enter the main land. That means they start here, and they need to move 1, 2, 3, 4 in order to move then into the main board with normal movement, as we explained before. But again, as I mentioned, a follower can never attack a shaman. Structures. Each magic land consists of 2 sections. The circular section acts as the same way as a hex on the board. The character can move there. In addition, it indicates the requirement you need to fulfill in order to control or conquer the magic land. So again, this is like a normal space. You can move there in order to control it. And if it shows the requirement that needs either a value on the shadow die or having several characters on board, in addition to the one controlling, are within the circular space over here. And again, red magic lands are special. They are only 2 in each pile and they start always face up, while orange and green magic land tiles are face down and they need to be activated from respective spaces in order to be revealed and conquered in a future turn or in the same if you have enough movement. Also, the rectangular section shows what power, resource or XP bonus you get by controlling the land. This is described here, 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 etc. And also remember, in the flame section you have dots. If it's 1 dot it's for level 1, if it's 2 dots it's for level 2, and if it's 3 dots it's for level 3. Red lands, as I mentioned, they're a bit different. The red lands are located on the center of the board and provide a powerful bonus every time a character harnesses them during the harness the cantrip phase, when you have this opportunity as a free action. And they also provide a powerful bonus every time, and they shouldn't have any opponent on them, of course, not to be harnessed. A red magic land start the game with 3 energy points that you can use, and when all 3 are depleted, as I mentioned, the land decays, it's discarded, and the magic land below is revealed, put back into the energy tracker. Again, important, the red ones are not slotted on your main board, they are just discarded. And you have 3 times to use them, but they provide a really powerful benefit. When you enter into a red magic land, so let's say for example this one entered here, you get a red crystal at the end of your movement action. And this is simply why there is no requirement of this slot, like here or here there are requirements. Here it just shows that you can enter with either a follower or a shaman. And at the end of your movement you're going to get a red crystal from the reserve. So how do we use the non-red magic lands, the orange and the green ones? Green and orange magic lands have to be discovered face up before you can conquer them. Green and orange magic lands can be conquered. The player will claim them for themselves and enjoy a one-time bonus. For the green lands, a permanent, or for the orange ones, they will increase in power. So the green ones, specifically, they can be used at any moment of any player's turn and not necessarily when they get conquered. And when you use its power, you put a dark crystal on it to indicate that you can't use it anymore. But you need to have this already conquered. Okay. So this is how you use magic lands. Mystical sources. These 5 hexes are called mystical sources. At the beginning of the game, all mystical sources have a magic crystal or an evocation token from level 2 onwards placed on them. Every time your character ends on a mystical source at the end of their turn, this activates magic lands that aren't red, if possible, and we have explained how this is done. And this also unlocks the mystical source's resource, if still present, that you can obtain it at the end of your round or in the next one. Standing on the mystical source protects your character. So if you are on a mystical source, this protects your character, of course. If an opponent tries to attack you, they have to be mindful of the protection that the mystical tile source provides. They need to sacrifice an object of equal value. This means, for example, that if the mystical source is protected by a red magical crystal, your opponent will have to discard the red magical crystal from their hand in order to be able to attack you. You can cover mystical sources with other dark or colored tiles. We'll see this how it works on level 2. And every time a magic land pile is exhausted, you add 1 new resource, the same one as added during setup, to each mystical source tile without a resource, because it was removed. Aha, the magical crystals that we either collect or we use them for their purposes. The magical crystals are a great source of wisdom and power. Shamans are always in search for them, as they are the main instrument of their path to greatness. There are 4 types of magical crystals in the game. We have orange, green, red and vital ones. Vital crystals are jokers. They can be used of any color at any moment. These are the pink ones. The crystals have 3 main uses. Playing them to control for the control action, as I have explained before. Gaining experience points by performing the focus cantrip and converting them to XP, as I have described before. Or during magic battles, which we'll see in a sec. Magic battle. A magic battle always breaks out when two characters meet on the same hex or magic land. So in this scenario they moved in the same hex, so due to the fact that they're on the same hex, and it's allowed because a shaman can attack a shaman, a battle will break. The character performing the movement towards the opponent character is considered the attacker. The attacker takes the first turn in the battle. Two characters of the same color in the same hex cannot be attacked because a hex can only host two characters at a maximum capacity. So for example, if I was like that, this shaman cannot enter and attack this hex because it already contains two figures. But of course, if there is space and it's only one, then you can move and attack. Combat resources. Magic battles are conducted by using resources, cards, and magic crystals to generate combat values. When you play crystal or cards, you can either damage your opponent's battle energy, pushing the battle pawn down the battle energy tracker, or recover your own battle energy, moving your own pawn up. The flow of the battle. Magic battles are structured in turns, alternating between the players, and during every combat turn, you can use one magic crystal from your storage, or 1 to 3 shadow cards from your hand, or you can quit the battle if you're losing. In addition, you can add one modifier or bonus provided by one of the magic lands on your personal board that you have conquered, if any. Use a magic crystal as soon as possible. Every player can use only one color. The first time you use a magic crystal, choose a crystal from your personal board, let's say a yellow one, and take that matching die of that color, so yellow crystal for yellow die, and place it here on your respective spot for the power slot. For this battle, the opponent cannot use crystals from their stock or the battle die of that color. So since the yellow has selected the yellow crystal and die, that means that the blue player cannot use yellow crystals or yellow die. If the color you want to play have been already chosen by the opponent, you can use it for this battle. Both cards and crystals can be used on their own or combined with other resources you've played. There is a legend on the battle board too, and your color is represented as turquoise, while the opponent color is fuchsia. So let's see, this is the legend, and your own color is always turquoise, while your opponent's color is fuchsia. Again, this is sideways, but let's read it from top to the bottom. Okay. Vertically, play an opponent's shadow card to generate one combat unit, or a shadow card of your color to generate two combat units. Okay, so if I play a shadow card of the opponent, so if I'm the yellow player and I play a color blue shadow card, then I generate one value. If I play a card of my own color, I generate two value. Again, I remind you that when I'm playing shadow cards, I decide the color. So if I'm, let's say, the blue player and I place it like that vertically, then I'm playing it for the blue. Or, of course, I can play it for the yellow, but I always prefer playing it for my own color because a single vertical card generates two value. So, if, for example, I had this one and I was the blue player, I will play it for the blue vertically and it will generate two combat value. Play a magic crystal, discard one crystal of the color you chose during the flow of the battle beginning and roll the corresponding battle die. So let's say I discard one yellow and I roll the yellow die, and this gives me a value. You play a magic crystal and you discard one crystal of the color you chose during the flow of the battle, and then you roll the die, as I mentioned. Then you also have the resource combined with other resources that you played. So horizontally play a shadow card of your color, I remind you, turquoise is always your color, on top of two vertical shadow cards, so 1 and 1, 2, in order to generate two combat units. So if the two vertical cards are both of the opponent, and then you put one of your own on top, then you create two combat units. If you have one of your own and one of your opponent, and then you place your own on top, then you create three combat units. Then if you have 3 combat cards, shadow cards of your own color. So I'm the yellow player and I played 3 yellow, 2 vertical and 1 on top. Then for a total of 3 of my own color, I generate 4 combat units. And I'm using this in order to add to my total combat value. And you play crystal, the color you already chose. So you see the color still remains the same for all the possibilities. So I chose yellow and I need to be yellow. On top of the horizontal card, like that, in order to set the opponent to the same combat energy as yours, or set yourself to the same combat energy as your opponent, which is explained with this icon. And it's the last one in the legend on the bottom. All these scenarios are explained here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, for a quick reminder. There are also some peculiarities on the battle dice. So for example, this one means that 3 combat units and you draw a shadow card, or that one, 3 combat units and immediately play a shadow card from your hand. If a character reaches the skull level, which is -10 for the first level, it can't be damaged anymore. The owner of that character discards one combat resource of their choice, a magic card crystal from the personal board or a shadow card from their hand. They will keep discarding one resource for each round they are still in that position after the opponent's battle turn. If a follower has reached the skull level at the end of the battle, it is killed and will go back to the character's mini board. And if it is a shaman, it will be downgraded into a follower. And the magic battle aftermath. Both players, starting with the attacker, convert the total damage they dealt to the opponent into XP. Damage in the battle tracker, for example, if your opponent pawn is on the -4 position here, that means you gain 4 XP. And damage in the life tracker, vital crystals tracker, which is done over there respectively. The winner takes 1 vital crystal from the opponent's vital energy tracker and places it in the magic crystal storage. You can claim a magic land after you have resolved a magic battle on it. The defeated character goes back into its place of origin, hat for follower or heart for shaman, and the winning character can either stay on the hex where the battle started or go back to the place of its origin unless a battle is performed in the hearth. In this case, the winning character has to go back to its place of origin. If you win the battle but your character has reached the skull level, the character is killed nonetheless. Since you are the winner, you don't lose your vital stones. You reset your magical energy trackers for the next battle, and each battle pawn starts a new battle on the starting position of the magical energy tracker. Game end. The game ends when either of the conditions below are met. A player fills up all 6 magic land spaces on the personal board, so all these slots are filled with magic land tiles around the player board. B, 3 magic land piles of any color have been depleted from their respective areas. C, a player loses all their vital stones on the battle board. In this case, no need to count XP. Or D, a player loses all the characters because they're all defeated. Then we have XP and scoring. An increasing number of XP is rewarded for every filled magic land space on your board. You see you have 5 XP for 1 captured magic land, 10 for 2, 15 for 3, 22 for 4, 30 for 5, and 40 for all 6 slots around the board. So if you manage to fill all 6 of them, then you're gaining the maximum number of 40 experience points on top of what you have recorded in the game. Also 10 XP for each shaman and 5 XP for each follower, for the total sum. Level 2, once you have familiarized yourself with level 1, is the Glory Seekers. It's still for 2 players, ages 14 and up, and the length is still 45 minutes. So the components you have in addition, as I mentioned, is you have 20 evocation tokens, which are these tokens here. They are looking like that on the back, and they have different symbols on the top. Just to show you a few. There's a big variety. And these are 20 in total, 4 copies of each of the 5 different powers. You have 4 orange magic land tiles, 2 red magic land tiles, and 4 green magic land tiles, again with the respective level as I mentioned, in the flame area of the tile. You also have 50 colored shadow tiles. You have 15 in each of the player colors, so 15 blue and 15 yellow, and they are double-sided. And you also have 20 black shadow. Also, in this second level, the shadow tiles board comes in place, and then you can use it. For setup, you repeat the setup from level 1 with the addition of some extra steps. You put 5 evocation tokens on the 5 mystical sources, replacing the magical crystals. So instead of magical crystal here, you put evocation tokens on those spaces, like that, on each of the 5 locations. You add level 2 red, green and orange magical land tiles to the respective piles. Each player gets 15 shadow tiles of their own color, as I mentioned. You put 20 dark shadow tiles beside the board for common use, and you put the other 15 evocation tokens face down beside the main board. For the gameplay, this scenario of level 2 uses the same gameplay rules as the previous one and introduces 2 new mechanics: shadow tile generation and movement, and evocation tokens. So first is play generating shadow tiles. For the play, when you play cards. Shadow tiles are your power made manifest on hexes on the main board. You can create tiles of your color, full color or bicolor, or dark tiles when you perform the action play shadow cards while performing the action play. Always increases your die in total. So both increase your value on the shadow die, but also you add shadow tiles. You can as well generate shadow tiles, and the generated shadow tiles can be placed in any hex of the main board except mystical sources. The generation cost for the shadow tiles is the following. You generate a shadow tile of your color for each shadow card of your color you played if you build it on an empty hex. So for example, I played a yellow, I'm a yellow player, I played a yellow shadow card. That means I'm generating and I'm placing on an empty hex, for example like that or like that. Empty hexes, I cannot place it on mystical power slots. I'm placing shadow tiles of my own color. It costs 2 shadow cards of your color to build a shadow tile of your color on the top of a dark shadow tile or a shadow tile of the opponent color. So if, for example, there is already a shadow tile or a dark shadow tile or a shadow tile of the opponent, in order to build on top, either here or here, and cover it, I need to pay 2 shadow cards of my color. And the tile underneath stays there. Shadow card of any color allows you to build a dark shadow tile. 1 card to build a dark tile on an empty hex, or 2 if on top of another shadow tile. Full dark shadow tiles are generated from the common stock of 20 dark tiles. You also have bicolor shadow tiles, which again, I remind you, each of your own shadow tiles is bicolor, so it has both your color and shadow from the back side. The same goes for the yellow player. You can build them at the cost of dark shadow tiles, for example, using any shadow card in your hand, but on the board you consider them full color. For the opponents, they are considered dark shadow tiles. So for me it's going to be blue, but for the opponent it's going to be shadow, if I build it like that. So what is all the fuss about the shadow tiles and what the benefits do they provide? You can create safe places on the main board. The opponent can't move or cross full tiles of your color, so it can't attack you, and you can speed up your movement on your tiles, both full and bicolor. You move for free on those movement on those hexes with there are some new movement rules that I'm going to explain, but remember, you only have 15, so you can use them wise. So you either block your opponent from moving there, or you can use them like a corridor to move for free, and you can reach across areas very, very fast. Of course, your opponent can build on top of them and disrupt your paths, but this creates a lot of strategy and brings a lot of different elements. So what are the effects of shadow tiles? So if I am a yellow player, both this is considered shadow tile and this. This is full color for the blue player. For me it has shadow borders, so it is shadow tile. So for the yellow player this is shadow tile and this is shadow tile. But I mean dark shadow tile. For the blue one, only this one is dark shadow tile and this one is full blue color. Okay? But what is the fuss about the dark shadow tiles? I mean those and those if it's used against your opponent. They slow down movement of any character crossing a dark shadow tile, requires 2 movement points instead of 1. And bicolor tiles will slow down only the opponent character, for example, as I mentioned before. So let's see now how you move using the shadow die with this new second level. So how you move on or through tiles of your own color. So let's say I'm the yellow player, I'm here and I want to move this one. So if I want to move here, I move for 0 movement points because that means, if I'm here, for example, I move for 0 movement points because from going here to here it's 0. But if I'm starting, let's say also from my own hearth, let's say I had also here a yellow one and here another yellow one. Since my own hearth location is considered a color of my own, that means that moving from here all the way to here is considered 0 movement points. So if I want to reach this spot, I only need to pay 1 movement point. So boom, free and 1 movement point to move outside of my own color. Again, I remind you that if I'm using or passing over the color with my own color, that means this is a dark shadow for the blue player, but for me it counts still as a red, it's a yellow. So that means that I can still pass through for 1 movement point to reach this location. Okay, if you move across a shadow tile, whether it's by color and it's not your color, so if I want to move here or if I want to move here, that's the same, I need to spend 2 movement points for this and 1 movement point for that. So 2 movement points and 1 free in order to reach this location. Or if I wanted to go here, again, 2 movement points and 1 free. So shadow tiles, dark shadow tiles, count for 2 movement points instead of normal 1. And of course, you cannot pass over your opponent's color. That means that this player, in order to go here, they cannot go over this area to cross because this is considered block. So the color of your opponent is considered a block. The bicolor is shadow for you and full color for your own, for the yellow player. So he can go by here by spending more movement points because he passes over a dark shadow tile. But if this was only yellow, the only way this figure can reach across here is if they go around in order to reach it, because this is considered blocked area for them. Very tactical. You also have a new element of the evocation tokens, which are these tokens as I mentioned before. So the evocation tokens, you can get them either in one of the 2 scenarios. When you're the first to reach a hex with an evocation token, so if I'm the first one to go here, I will pick it up, or if I get it also as a boon when I'm from one of the magic lands. So you can use evocation tokens for free at any moment on your turn and during your turn once per turn, or during a magic battle once per combat, and you can sacrifice 2 evocation tokens, 2 of those, to perform an evocation, of course, and evoke a new follower or transform a follower into a shaman. So this boosts your, let's say, capability to bring new figures, new characters on board. So these are very valuable. Evocation tokens are one-shot powers that you can use during your turn or during a magic battle, and they have different abilities, but just to show you a few. You see they have different abilities. For example, you can use this to use a magic crystal of any color to roll your battle die, or you can use it to generate 2 shadow tiles for free, etc. And these are really powerful, of course. So the game ends in the same way, like with level 1. So XP and scoring, you get 2 experience for each visible shadow tile of your color on top of the previously mentioned XP that you gain from level 1. So in this case, each shadow tile of your color will give you 2 XP. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And remember, again, this also counts as your own color. if you are the yellow player. The level 3 is Tremendous Clash. It plays for 2 players, ages 14 and up, and the length is just slightly longer, 60 minutes. In order to play level 3, you need to add all the components from level 1 and 2, plus 1 experience fragment platform, which goes in this slot to replace in its position the crystals reserve, so you put it aside. You also have 3 temples. These are the temples that I showed you during the component breakdown. And you also have 22 experience tokens, experience fragments they called, which are these tiles here, and there are quite a few which have a lot of different abilities from the other side, but they all look like that from the back. These are the experience fragments. The setup is the same as level 2 with some exceptions. The personal board now uses the expert one, so instead of using this side, which is the side A, you use side B, which has slots for fragments, as you can see, and different other things I'm going to explain. So this is a side for level 3. The battle board uses the expert side with the energy tracker used during magic battles, so you need to reverse it, which I just did, and I'm reminding you that this goes all the way down to -8 instead of -10 compared to the previous levels 1 and 2. You put the experience fragments beside the main board and pick 6 randomly, random experience fragments, and you place them on the 6 slots of the platform face up, so they're going to go here, populating this area. Again, you have six slots, so all of them should have an experience fragment on the platform. Last, you put the 3 temples next to the board in easy reach for the players. The personal board functions the same way as the one used in previous levels, level 1 and 2, with some additional exceptions. Your initial magic crystal storage is now 4 instead of 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4 slots instead of 6. Second, when you get an experience fragment, you can use its power for free during your turn, once per turn, in the same way you use powers of your magic lands. And here are the slots for the experience fragments, that you put them here. The ones that you acquire, of course. Okay, you need to have them from here. So let's do this right. And you also have magic land spaces, which are same like level 1. You also have a shadow die space. Again, this goes here, same like level 1. And you also have the magic crystal storage, but it has just capacity of 4 instead of 6. So the rest are the same. For the gameplay, this scenario is using the same gameplay like level 2 and introduces 2 new mechanics, experience fragments and shadow temples, as well as notable additions to the magic battle rules. So for the experience fragments, so how do you get them? When you reach one of the experience fragment icons on your experience tracker, then you reach 20, 40 and 60. This is highlighted with icons, as you see here, next to the 20, 40 and 60 slot. You get 1 experience fragment from the platform. You place a fragment on one of your spaces on your personal board here, and you can also place the fragment face down, extending your magical crystal storage by 1, but you cannot use the unique power of the fragment. If you place it face down, you extend your storage by 1. Using the experience fragments. During your turn, you can use experience fragments for free to harness its bonus or empower one of your actions. This works just like the effect of a magic land from your personal board. For full list of this, you have to revert to the appendix, where the experience fragments are fully explained, and there are quite a few. The magic battle additions. The expert level scenario introduces an important novelty to the magic battle rules. You use the side of the battle board that has 8 spaces, as I mentioned, which means it's easier to get to the skull level. The last part is the temples. The temples are an additional source of XP during and at the end of the game. How the mechanics of the temple work. When there are 3 dark shadow tiles, either full dark or bicolor in a triangular shape, So for example, let's say we have this case here, 1, 2, 3. Let's remove that just to make it more visible. Okay, so here I have 2 full dark shadow tiles and 1 additional shadow tile. Okay, then they also need to be next to a mystical tile like this one. So here we have a triangle of dark shadow tiles, either full or bicolor, in trigonal shape, next to an active mystical source. So it needs to be an active mystical source here. That means that you put the temple in the intersection between the 3 dark shadow tiles, and this is called the temple hexis. So this goes here and it's touching the center of the triangle. You can also keep in mind that at the end of your turn, for each of your characters in one of the temple hexes, you score experience equal to the area number of hexes of the temple. And in this example, for let's say it was this player here, here or here, okay, they would gain in this case 3 experience. So they're making these temples really focal points because they award you a lot of experience points at the end of each of your turns, for each of your characters. A player can destroy, cover only 1 temple hex per turn. When this happens, the building shifts into an intersection between the 2 remaining hexes, and if another hex is destroyed, the temple is moved to the temple's existing hex, and that can be destroyed by the shadow tile of any color. So if this is destroyed, for example, or I should say covered, then it moves here in the intersection of the 2, and if this also is changed, destroyed, then it moves on this single shadow, dark shadow tile. But this cannot be further destroyed. The temple size does not replenish, it can only decrease from 3 to 2 to 1. Experience at the end of the game. At the end of the game, each temple provides 5 experience. On the remaining temple hexes, the player who has the highest influence is considered the temple owner, and he controls the temple. The influence of the player on the temple is equal to the sum of their character on the temple hexes plus the number of bicolor shadow tiles of their color that are still part of the temple hexes. And in a case of a draw, the temple has no owner. So here's an example of what I'm just describing. A temple is formed by 2 hexes in this case. Let's say that this is here. 1 dark shadow tile and 1 bicolor yellow dark tile. On the temple's hexes there are 2 blue characters. The influence of the yellow player is 1 yellow dark, but no characters. And the influence of the blue player is 2, 0 for the shadow tiles, and 2 for the 2 characters. The blue player is the owner of the temple in this case. So there you have it, this is how you play all levels. So it's recommended, of course, you start with a level 1, then you proceed to level 2, and then to level 3. But all levels bring something meaningful, and they progress into complexity, but without being over complex. They just add additional mechanics and gameplay, which is really nice. And there is also a variant for a 4-player variant, 2 versus 2, which is explained and added in the rulebook recently. And just to show you the last thing, there is the appendix with the powers explanation, which is a separate rulebook, which has all the magic lands described, both green and orange. And you also have the red magic lands explained, but also you have, if you're playing level 2, for example, the level 3, for example, the experience fragments for their own abilities, respectively. So lots of cool things to discover. Even if you start from level 1, which is the first and most simple level, brings a lot of nice gameplay. So let's wrap it up and let's move up. Okay, lots of things to like and that they stand outside from the crowd on this game, in my opinion. First of all, the production value. You've seen this is a prototype, and it's so beautiful. It's amazing. It has so many different things to glare and stare on the board, on the piece components or the game components, whether you have the wooden standard edition or the deluxe with the miniatures. It's really beautiful. Recessed boards, matte thick boards, nice art, nice components, and very practical as well. So that being set aside, because it's not a minor thing, but we see it a lot in many board games lately, what I want to focus on is on the gameplay. If you like fighting games between two different people, two different sides, either in a team or one versus one, I think you should definitely check this one out. And the reason for that is that it has a lot of, I would say, tactical elements without a need for, I don't know, huge number of rule sets or minor details and a lot of things and modifiers to remember. This is a very, very robust, very, very well designed, and it looks obviously that it's very well play tested game and system, I should say, that it builds on a core which is highly enjoyable on its own. So don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that level 1 is not cool, but level 2 is even more cool, and level 3 is, you know, once you've played level 1 and level 2, I think you will be most probably playing level 3 most of the times. And they're all easy to get behind. They play around 60 minutes, so very fast and very tense. I like the fact that you can use the cards for different ways, so you're never blocked out, you just have options all the time to do different things. When you go to the second level, you bring the shadow tiles, which bring a whole new level of strategy and opportunities, because you have corridors and blocks and things like that, on top of the additional things that I described during the level 1 section, the first level of the game. And then on the level 3 you also have the temples. So the system is really nice because it's very dynamic. It has a lot of things for you to take under consideration: activation of magic land tiles, acquiring magic land tiles, boosting your abilities, essentially building up in a way, because then you have more possibilities and more ways to either gain experience points or do damage to your opponent. The abilities of the magical land tiles and the experience fragments in level 3, there are so many, really, there are so many that they provide a lot of variability and a lot of different and unique feel in each session. All of my plays so far felt different because I went for different things. Of course, it's a tactical game, so it feels different, but also the abilities that you choose and the different things that you do in the game, they give you a unique feeling each time and a unique gaming experience. And on top of that, I really think that the amount of strategy that goes into the tactical movement, the placement of your figures, when you get more figures out, when do you convert your crystals, which crystals you go for, which corridors you try to penetrate in order to gain access to your the opponent's hearth and create evoke a new character, etc. So lots of different cool things, very, very well crafted. It's obvious. I mean, I think from your first play or your first try of the game, you can immediately see that it's a game that has been tested and played a lot, and they have, I should say, polished all the rough corners around the design, because it looks really, really slick, and I really enjoyed the gameplay. So I highly recommend it if you're into battlers between two players in a fantasy, unique fantasy universe with a lot of tactical options and a lot of replayability. This is definitely a keeper for me, because it has a lot of gameplay, a lot of decisions, and very, very fast gameplay. It's quickly back and forth, but with a lot of tension and a lot of meaningful decisions, because you're really trying to get your opponent into the corner and try to get him, to defeat him, or you can win by acquiring the most experience points. And I also like the fact that the game ends in different ways. So for example, if one player fills all of the 6 slots on their magical slot area on the player board, they trigger the end of the game. Or if, for example, they do another end game condition, it doesn't matter, it has, I think, 4, if I remember correctly, on top of my head. But what is important is the fact that it also brings a lot of different variability into the game and replayability, because you have to look for 4 different things on how the game ends. And this is really, really cool if you're really close with your opponent. So only good things to say about the game. Really, really excited, highly recommended, fast, simple, very, very deep, very, very fun, and very, very enjoyable, and it looks beautiful. This is Ynaros Fallin, and this is Epitrapaizoume, and many thanks for watching.